Grant laughed from the back of the hearing room, telling the zoning board I was just playing hotel. He thought I was still the soft little sister he could bully. He had no idea that while he smirked at my permits, I was quietly acquiring the debt that kept his flashy lifestyle afloat. I did not invest $95 million just to build a resort. I invested it to own the very ground my brother stood on. The wood paneling of the Alder Creek Town Council chambers smelled of lemon polish and old dust. It was a scent that reminded me of childhood detentions, of waiting to be scolded for things I had not done. I sat perfectly still in the front row, my hands folded on top of a leather folder that contained 3 years of my life. I counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4. The air in the room was thick, heated by the press of bodies and the hum of the ventilation system that had not been updated since the 1990s. Behind me, the gallery was full. I could feel the eyes of the town on the back of my neck. Alder Creek was the kind of place where memory had a long shelf life. To them, I was still the Robinson girl who had left for Europe and never come back. The quiet one who lived in the shadow of the Golden Boy. And the Golden Boy was here too. I heard the scrape of a chair boot against the linoleum floor 3 rows back. Then came the laugh. It was a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. A sharp, barking chuckle that was designed to make everyone else feel small. Grant was holding court. I did not turn around, but I could picture him perfectly. He would be leaning back, one ankle resting on his knee, flashing that bright, practiced smile that had charmed investors and debitors alike for 15 years. "She is just playing hotel," I heard him say. His voice was a stage whisper, projected perfectly to carry to the council members seated on the dais. "It is cute, really, but she cannot afford the real game." My chest tightened, the old instinct to shrink, to apologize for taking up space, flared in my gut. I smoothed the corner of my folder. It was a small, tactile grounding mechanism. I was 33 years old. I was not the little sister anymore. I was a woman who had built a $95 million resort project from the dirt up, and I had done it without asking Grant Robinson or our father for a single dime. The council chairman, a gray-haired man named Harold Benson, who had known my father since high school, cleared his throat. "Ms. Robinson," he said, peering over his spectacles, "we have reviewed the zoning variance request for the Lake Glass Ridge access road. There are concerns about traffic density." I stood up. My legs felt solid. I had prepared for this. I walked to the podium, placing my hands on the wood. "Mr. Chairman," I said, keeping my voice level, "I understand the concern. Alder Creek values its quiet. That is why I am not asking the town to pay for road widening. If you turn to page 42 of the proposal, you will see the traffic mitigation study." I heard a scoff from the back. "Grant again," I continued, ignoring him. "Lake Glass Ridge is implementing a mandatory shuttle system for all guests arriving from the airport. We project a 30% reduction in vehicle traffic compared to the previous residential zoning allowance. Furthermore, I am committing to a workforce housing contribution. We have purchased the old mill building on the south side and are converting it into 12 subsidized units for our staff, to ensure we do not strain the local rental market." The room went silent. The scratching of pens stopped. Workforce housing was the third rail of Alder Creek politics. Everyone needed it. Nobody wanted to build it. I saw Harold Benson's eyebrows lift. "You are paying for that yourself?" Councilwoman Miller asked. "Yes," I said, "and to address the concerns about local commerce, the resort has a charter in its bylaws. We are prioritizing local vendors, the bakery, the florist, the guide services. If they are based in Alder Creek, they get first right of refusal on all contracts." I heard a murmur ripple through the crowd. This was not the pitch of a dilettante playing with her inheritance. This was the pitch of someone who had done the math. Grant's chair scraped again, louder this time. He was losing the room, and he knew it. The vote was taken 10 minutes later. It was unanimous. Approval granted. I did not smile. I did not pump my fist. I simply nodded to the council, gathered my folder, and turned to walk down the center aisle. Grant was waiting for me by the double doors. He looked good. in that superficial way that photographs well but looks tired up close. He was wearing a navy suit that cost more than my first car, and on his wrist sat a Patek Philippe that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. He was 40 years old, but the lines around his eyes were deepening. Etched by stress, he tried to pass off as intensity. "Congrats, Nat," he said, stepping into my path so I had to stop. "Thank you. Grant," I said. He flashed that smile, the one that did not reach his eyes. Although I have to say, that housing promise? That is going to eat your margins alive. You are bleeding cash before you even open the doors. I have factored it in. I said, "It is called sustainability." He laughed, shaking his head. "You always were the idealist. Look, if you get in over your head, and you will, everyone does, give me a call. Robinson Meridian Partners has relationships you do not have. I can make the banks say yes when they start getting cold feet." I looked at him, really looked at him. There was a sheen of sweat on his upper lip. Despite the cool air of the hallway, he pulled his phone out of his pocket to check a notification, and I saw it, a tremor. Just a slight, rapid shaking of his thumb as he swiped the screen. He was terrified. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. "I am fully funded." "Grant," I said, "but thank you for the offer." His smile tight, the skin stretching over his cheekbones. "Just trying to help. Would hate to see you embarrass the family name with a foreclosure." The irony was so thick, I could taste it like copper. I stepped around him. "I will see you at Sunday dinner," he called after me. I kept walking. "I will be busy." I walked out into the crisp Colorado evening, the air smelling of pine and impending snow. I got into my truck. A practical, muddy Toyota. Not the Range Rover Grant thought I should drive, and gripped the steering wheel. I let out the breath I had been holding for 2 hours. I had built Lake Glass Ridge in silence for a reason. In the Robinson family, an achievement was not something you owned. It was something that was annexed. If I had told them 3 years ago what I was planning, my father would have taken over the board, and Grant would have leveraged the equity to fund his own speculations. I had learned survival the hard way. By drawing boundaries so stark, they looked like fortifications. I drove up the winding mountain road toward the ridge. The resort rose from the trees like a natural extension of the landscape, all timber, stone, and vast sheets of glass that reflected the twilight. It was beautiful, and it was mine. I parked in the contractor lot and walked into the temporary administration trailer. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of coffee. Tessa Marlowe, my general manager, was leaning over a set of blueprints with Elijah Klein, my head of operations. They looked up as I entered. Their faces were serious. "How did it go?" Tessa asked. She was a sharp woman with short gray hair and a resume that included managing 5-star properties in Zurich. She did not rattle easily. "We got the vote," I said, dropping my bag on the desk. "Unanimous." Tessa did not smile. "Good, because we have a problem." Elijah turned a laptop screen toward me. He was a big man, a former park ranger who knew every inch of the mountain. He pointed to a log of phone calls. 3 more today. Elijah said, "Anonymous. They are calling the county clerk, the fire marshal, and the EPA regional office. They are claiming we are dumping construction waste in the creek and that our electrical permits were forged." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my spine. It was starting. "Did the clerk take them seriously?" I asked. "They have to investigate every complaint." Elijah said, "It is going to slow us down. We have inspectors coming out tomorrow morning." Again, I stared at the screen. The calls were precise. They knew exactly which bureaucratic buttons to push to cause the maximum delay. This was not a disgruntled neighbor. This was someone who knew the development game. "We do not hide," I said firmly. "We open the doors. Let them inspect every inch. We have nothing to hide." "I know," Tessa said, "but the staff is getting jittery. The housekeeping team heard a rumor that we are going to be shut down before opening day." I straightened up. "Call a team meeting for tomorrow morning. I will speak to them. We log every threat. We record every interaction with an inspector. If someone wants to play dirty, we meet them with aggressive transparency." Elijah nodded, looking relieved. "You got it, boss." I went into my private office and closed the door. My hands were steady now. I sat down and dialed a number I had memorized. Camille Hart answered on the first ring. She was not just my attorney. She was the only person in the world who knew the entire architecture of my life. "They are calling the inspectors," I said without preamble. "I expected that," Camille said. Her voice was dry, calm. "It is a harassment tactic." "Who do you think it is?" I thought of the tremor in Grant's hand. I thought of the sweat on his lip. "I think my brother is desperate." I said, "Listen to me, Natalie," Camille said. "I had lunch with Wade Ellison today." Wade was a local banker, a man who had handled Robinson family accounts for decades. He was slippery, the kind of man who smiled with his mouth while his eyes calculated your liquidation value. "And?" I asked. "He was fishing," Camille said. "He asked about your liquidity. He dropped a few hints that the lending market is tightening up, implying you might need a bridge loan. He mentioned Grant's firm in the same breath, suggested that a consolidation of family assets might be smart." I swiveled my chair to look out the window. The sun had set, and the work lights were illuminating the skeleton of the main lodge. "Wade knows better," I said. "He knows what you told the town," Camille corrected. "He does not know about the holding company." "No," I said. "And he is not going to know." I had structured the financing of Lake Glass Ridge with the paranoia of a woman who expected to be mugged. There was the primary construction loan. Yes, but beneath that, there was a web of private notes and a separate entity I controlled called Silverpine Hospitality Group. Silverpine was designed for one purpose: defense. It held cash reserves that could be deployed to buy distressed debt. It was my nuclear option. "Natalie," Camille said softly, "if Grant is working with Wade, they are looking for a way to force you into a partnership. They want your equity to plug a hole in Grant's ship." "I know," I said. "Keep the Silverpine file closed." "Camille, if Wade asks, I am stretched thin. Let them think I am vulnerable. It is a dangerous game," she said. "I am not playing a game," I replied. "I am building a fortress." 2 nights later, the Alder Creek Lodge hosted its annual charity gala. It was the premier social event of the season, a black tie affair meant to raise money for the local land trust. In reality, it was a place where net worth was measured and alliances were tested. I wore a simple black dress, sleek and unadorned. I did not wear jewelry. I wanted to look professional, invisible. I stood near a pillar, sipping sparkling water, watching the room. Grant was in his element. He was holding a glass of scotch, surrounded by a circle of admirers. Our mother, Diane, was next to him. She looked elegant and fragile, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an exit. She was gripping Grant's arm like it was a life raft. I saw Wade Ellison join the circle. He whispered something to Grant, and Grant threw his head back and laughed. It was too loud. Then Grant tapped his spoon against his glass. The room quieted. Grant loved a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, his voice rich and expansive. "Thank you all for coming. It is great to see so many friends here who care about the future of our valley." He raised his glass. "To the builders," he said. "To the people who take real risks to make this town what it is." He paused, and his eyes found me in the shadows. The room followed his gaze. "And of course," he continued, a smirk playing on his lips, "to my little sister Natalie, who is proving that even a Pinterest board can become a business if you have a big enough mortgage." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. It was a slap in the face, delivered with a smile. He was dismissing $95 million of hard assets as a hobby project. He was telling the town I was a joke. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I did not look away. I held his gaze. "Good luck with the project." "Nat," he said, raising his glass higher. "Try not to break anything." He drank. The room buzzed with whispers. I did not storm out. I did not throw my drink. I set my glass down on a passing waiter's tray. I took my phone out of my clutch. I opened the Notes app. Witnesses: Mayor Higgins, Councilman Benson, Wade Ellison, Sarah Jenkins. Quote, "Pinterest board with a mortgage. Try not to break anything." I recorded the time, 8:45 p.m. Then I walked over to my mother. She looked terrified. "Natalie," she whispered, reaching for my hand. He was just joking. You know how he is. I looked at her hand on mine. Her skin was paper thin. She had spent 40 years excusing him, smoothing over the cracks he left in the world. I know exactly how he is. Mom, I said quietly. I withdrew my hand. I walked out of the ballroom, my head high, the sound of silverware clinking on china fading behind me. I did not cry until I was in the safety of my truck, and even then, it was only for 10 seconds. Then I wiped my face and started the engine. When I got back to my cabin, a small rental I was living in until the resort was finished, my laptop was glowing on the kitchen counter. There was a notification, an email. The sender was anonymous. Truth-teller, protonmail.com. The subject line was blank. I opened it. It was a spreadsheet. I sat down on the bar stool, still in my gala dress, and squinted at the screen. It was an internal debt schedule for Robinson Meridian Partners. My breath caught in my throat. The numbers were catastrophic. Grant was not just over-leveraged. He was underwater. He had borrowed against the equity of 3 development projects that had not even broken ground. He was paying interest on interest. I scrolled down. There was a section highlighted in red. A tranche of commercial notes totaling $12 million. They were held by a private capital pool. The covenants were tight. If his liquidity dropped below a certain ratio, the notes would go into default immediately. And then, at the bottom of the email, there was an attachment, a photograph. I clicked it. It was a document, a personal guarantee for a line of credit. The signature at the bottom read, Diane Robinson. I stared at it. I knew my mother's signature. I had seen it on birthday cards and school permission slips my entire life. It was loop-heavy, elegant, a relic of a time when penmanship mattered. This signature looked like hers, but the R in Robinson was too sharp. The slant was slightly off. It was a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. My phone rang. The screen lit up. Mom. I stared at it. The timing was too perfect. I picked it up. Hello? Natalie? Her voice was breathless, high-pitched. I am here. Mom, I just wanted to check in. After the toast, I hope you were not upset. I am fine. I said, Good. Listen, honey. She paused. I heard her take a shaky breath. Your brother he is under a lot of pressure right now. The market is shifting. He just needs a little support. Support? I asked. Or money? He says if he can just get through this quarter, everything will be fine, she said, rushing the words. He mentioned that maybe the family should stick together, that maybe you could help him secure a bridge loan, just to smooth things over. I closed my eyes. It was the same old song. Grant broke the window. I was expected to hold the dustpan. Mom, I said, keeping my voice very soft. Did you sign a guarantee for him recently? There was a silence on the line. A long, heavy silence. I sign a lot of papers. Natalie. You know Grant handles the estate. Did you sign a guarantee for $12 million? I asked. Natalie. Stop it. You are being difficult. He is your brother. She did not say no. She deflected. That meant she either did not know, or she was too afraid to admit she had been coerced. I looked at the image on my screen. The sharp R. I cannot help him. Mom, I said. Natalie, please. I cannot help him. I repeated. I have my own investors to protect. You are so cold, she whispered. Just like your father. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The wind rattled the window pane. I felt the pull, the ancient, gravity well pull of the family dynamic. It would be so easy to call Wade Ellison tomorrow, to pledge a piece of my resort as collateral, to save Grant one more time, to make my mother stop shaking, to be the good daughter. I reached for my notebook. I opened it to a fresh page. I took my pen and wrote in clear, block letters, I won't buy peace with my future. I looked at the spreadsheet again. Grant was drowning, and he was trying to drag me down with him to use as a flotation device. I was not going to save him, but I needed to know who sent this email, and I needed to know who had traced my mother's signature, because if Grant fell, He was going to create a blast radius that would level everything around him. I picked up my phone and texted Camille, "Meet me at the site at 6 a.m. We have a problem. And bring the name of that forensic document examiner you used on the Miller case." I turned off the kitchen light. Darkness swallowed the room, but the image of that forged signature burned behind my eyelids. The game Grant was playing wasn't just expensive anymore, it was criminal. And if he thought I was just playing hotel, he was about to learn exactly how the real game was played. The morning sun was hitting the conference table in Camille Hart's office, but it offered no warmth. The air conditioning was humming, a low, persistent drone that matched the tension in my chest. Across from me sat a man named Arthur Vance. He was small, fastidious, wearing a tweed jacket that seemed out of place in modern Colorado. He held a magnifying loupe in one hand and a high-resolution printout of the guarantee document in the other. He did not look up when he spoke. "It is clumsy," he said, "not amateur, exactly, but hurried." I leaned forward, clasping my hands together to stop them from picking at the varnish on the table. "Explain," I said. Vance pointed the handle of the loupe at the signature line. "See the hesitation marks here? At the top of the D and the curve of the R? When a person signs their own name, it is a fluid motion. Muscle memory takes over. It is ballistic. The pen moves before the brain consciously directs it. But this?" He tapped the paper. "This is a drawing, not a signature. The person who wrote this was looking at a model and copying it. They paused here and here to check their work. That creates microscopic pools of ink. It is a tracing, or a freehand simulation." Camille, sitting at the head of the table, looked at me. Her face was grim. "You are sure?" she asked. Vance nodded. 99%. If you put this under a spectral comparator, you would see the pressure points are all wrong. Diane Robinson did not sign this document. My stomach dropped. It wasn't the sensation of fear, exactly. It was something heavier. Grief, disappointment. For years, the dysfunction in my family had been emotional. It was guilt trips, passive-aggressive silences, the subtle leveraging of affection for control. It was toxic, but it was legal. This was different. This was a felony. "If Mom did not sign it," I said, my voice sounding hollow in the room. "Then Grant forged it," Vance shrugged. "Or someone working for him, or someone who needed that guarantee to clear a compliance hurdle." I looked at the document again. It was a guarantee for a $12 million credit facility. If Grant defaulted, the lender could come after my mother's assets, her home, her retirement accounts, everything my father had left her. Grant had not just bet his own future, he had pushed our mother onto the table as a chip. "Thank you, Arthur," I said. I stood up. I felt cold. After Vance left, Camille closed the door. "Natalie," she said, "this changes the landscape. If we report this, Grant goes to prison." I walked to the window. Downtown Denver was busy below us. People rushing to lunch, oblivious to the fact that my family was imploding. "I know," I said. "And if we do not report it," Camille continued, "and the loan goes bad, your mother loses everything." I turned to face her. "I am not going to let either of those things happen." "How?" she asked. "I am going to get the leverage back." I said, "I need to know who is holding the paper, and I need to know who is squeezing him hard enough that he thought this was his only option." I drove back to Alder Creek in silence. The mountains usually calmed me, but today they felt like walls. When I pulled into the service entrance of Lake Glass Ridge, I saw a battered Ford pickup parked near the unfinished spa building. Elijah was standing next to it, talking to a man in dirty Carhartts. The man looked agitated, kicking at the dirt with his work boot. I parked and walked over. "Problem?" I asked. Elijah looked at me, his expression unreadable. "This is Mike Darrow. He runs the drywall crew for the West Wing. He wanted to talk to you." Darrow looked at me. He was a local guy, rough around the edges, the kind who had seen property developers come and go for 30 years. He took off his cap and twisted it in his hands. "Ms. Robinson," he said, "I got a weird offer yesterday." I waited. I did not prompt him. I learned long ago that people spill more if you just let the silence stretch. Darrow sighed. A guy came by the site. Slick. Didn't give a name. Said he represented a concerned citizens group. Said there was $5,000 cash in it for me if I found some. Structural issues. Behind the drywall in the spa. Just enough to fail an inspection. Maybe leave a few wires exposed. Maybe forget a fire block. I felt a flash of heat. Sabotage. Why are you telling me this? Mike? I asked. He looked down at his boots. Because you paid my last invoice 2 days early. And because I saw you doing the safety briefing with the guys last week, you actually checked their harnesses. He looked up, meeting my eyes. Your brother? He still owes me $4,000 from a spec house he built 2 years ago. I had to chase him for 6 months just to get the materials cost back. You treat us right. I am not going to screw you over for $5,000. I extended my hand. Thank you. Mike, I appreciate the loyalty. If this man comes back, call Elijah immediately. He shook my hand. His grip was rough, calloused. You watch your back. Ms. Robinson. People do not offer that kind of cash unless there is a lot more behind it. I watched him walk back to his truck. It is escalating, Elijah said quietly. Yes, I said. It is. That night. My phone rang at 11:30. I was awake, reviewing the interior design budgets for the lobby. I knew who it was before I looked. Grant. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. Hello? Grant? Nat, he said. His voice was slurring slightly, just a little bit, enough that I knew he had been drinking. It is late, I said. I know, he said. I am sitting here looking at the old photos. Remember the trip to Yellowstone? Dad made us stand in the rain for an hour to see that bear. I rubbed my eyes. What do you want? Grant? I need a bridge. Nat? Just a short one. 6 months. I have a deal closing in February that will wipe the slate clean. But I have a liquidity crunch right now. The banks they are being difficult. I closed my laptop. We talked about this. I cannot invest in your firm. My capital is tied up in the resort. Come on, he said, his voice dropping, becoming intimate, wheedling. You are sitting on a war chest. I know you have reserves. Mom said you were bragging about being under budget. I never bragged about anything. I said, and Mom does not know my financials. You owe me. Natalie, he snapped. The nostalgia vanished, replaced by a sudden, sharp anger. I owe you? I asked. I protected you, he said. When Dad left, when he walked out that door and left us with the mess, who stayed? Who took over the business so you could go off to Europe and play art student? I took the hit. Nat, I stayed in the blast zone so you could escape. I felt the old wound tear open. It was the narrative he had spun for 20 years. The martyr, the protector. You stayed because you wanted the control. Grant, I said softly, you wanted to be him. He went silent. I could hear his breathing. Heavy, ragged. You ungrateful. He started, then stopped. There was a long pause. You are going to regret this, he whispered. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, he said. The line went dead. I put the phone down. My hand was shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer, exhausting weight of it. He truly believed it. He believed he was the victim, and that made him dangerous. A man who believes he is owed something by the universe will burn down the world to collect the debt. The next day, I drove out to the edge of town, where the subdivisions gave way to open ranch land. My father, Harold Robinson, was living in a small, neat rental house near the river. He and my mother were in a trial separation, a polite term for the fact that they could no longer stand to be in the same room without bleeding on each other. I found him on the back porch, fly fishing rod in his lap, tying a lure. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, thinner. Natalie, he said, not looking up. To what do I owe the pleasure? I sat down on the step next to him. I did not want to beat around the bush. Grant is in trouble. Dad, Harold tied a knot, pulled it tight, and snipped the line with a small pair of scissors. Grant is always in trouble, he said. He has an appetite that exceeds his digestion. This is different, I said. He is forging documents. He is leveraging Mom's assets, and he is coming after my resort because he needs cash. Harold stopped moving. He placed the rod gently on the table next to him and turned to look at me. His eyes were the same color as mine, a cool, steel gray. Forging? He asked. I think so. Harold looked out at the river. The water was high, brown with runoff. He has been meeting with a man named Spencer Vane. Harold said, the name meant nothing to me. Who is Spencer Vane? Private capital. Harold said, hard money. He operates out of Denver, but he has hands everywhere. He specializes in distressed assets. He finds people who are desperate, builders who overextended, companies with cash flow problems, and he offers them a lifeline, but the terms are designed to fail. He does not want the loan repaid. He wants the collateral. I felt a chill. That explains the pressure. I said, if Grant borrowed from Vane, he is not just answering to a bank, he is answering to a shark. Harold nodded. Vane is dangerous, Natalie. He is not a businessman. He is a butcher. If Grant is in bed with him, he is already dead. He just does not know it yet. He looked at me, his gaze sharpening. Is your property secure? Harold asked. I think so. I said, I own the land. The financing is clean. Vane does not care about clean. Harold said, he cares about weakness. If Grant is targeting you, it is because Vane told him to. Grant is not smart enough to orchestrate a sabotage campaign on his own. He is a hammer. Vane is the hand swinging it. I stood up. I need to go. Harold reached out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. Natalie, he said, yes? Do not let them take it. You built something real. Grant never built anything real in his life. He just moved money around. You actually built something. It was the closest thing to a compliment he had ever given me. I won't, I said. I returned to the resort to find chaos. Tessa met me in the lobby. Her face was pale. Do not look at Yelp, she said, or TripAdvisor, or Google reviews. I walked past her into the office and opened my laptop. It was a massacre. In the last 6 hours, Lake Glass Ridge had received 45 one-star reviews. They were vicious. Staff was rude and discriminatory, refused to serve us because of how we looked. Saw rats in the kitchen. Health department should shut this place down. Construction is unsafe. Debris everywhere. My child almost got hurt. The resort wasn't even open yet. We had hosted 0 guests. These reviews were fiction. We need to respond, Tessa said, pacing the room. We need to tell them these are fake. We need to get legal involved to take them down. No, I said. I stared at the screen. The anger was there, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I forced myself to think like a general, not a victim. If we argue, we look defensive, I said. If we scream fake news, we look like we are panicking. So what do? Elijah asked from the doorway. Just let them trash us? No, I said. I started typing. We post a statement, one statement, across all platforms. I wrote quickly. Lake Glass Ridge is currently under construction and has not yet opened its doors to the public. We have hosted no guests to date. We take safety and service seriously. To ensure full transparency, we are inviting the county health and safety inspectors to tour our facility tomorrow, and we will live stream the walkthrough. Any future guest who feels our standards are not met will receive a full, immediate refund. We build on trust, not rumors. I hit enter. There, I said. We do not fight the lies. We just turn on the lights. The next morning, the inspectors arrived, and so did the camera crew I had hired. We walked them through every room. We showed them the pristine kitchen, the double-reinforced railings, the safety protocols. The inspectors found nothing. A few minor issues, a junction box that needed a label, a handrail that was loose, but nothing that warranted a shutdown, nothing that matched the horror stories in the reviews. But as the lead inspector, a man named Henderson, was signing the paperwork, he leaned in close to me. Ms. Robinson, he said, his voice low. Yes? Your electrical inspection? The one scheduled for next week? Yes? I would double-check your grounding wires before then, he said, and I would keep an eye on your breaker panels. I frowned. Why? Because, he said, glancing over his shoulder, I got a call from the regional director this morning. He wanted to know if I could find a reason to issue a stop work order. Any reason, even a clerical one. He looked at me, his eyes tired. I am a straight shooter. Ms. Robinson, I don't play politics, but someone upstairs is pushing hard. Thank you. Mr. Henderson, I said. I watched him drive away. It was coordinated. The reviews, the inspectors, the contractor bribe. It was a siege. 2 days later, Camille called me. I found it. She said, Found what? The debt. She said, I traced the note pool Grant is stuck in. It is managed by a group called Alder Creek Capital Trust. It is an opaque entity, but I dug into the filing history, and the trust has a liquidity trigger, Camille explained. If the underlying assets, Grant's loans, drop below a certain performance threshold, the trust has to offload them. They have to sell the bad debt to clear their books. I sat up straight. Sell it to who? To a qualified buyer. She said, There is a clause. Right of first offer. If the notes are distressed, they can be sold without the borrower's consent. I felt a pulse of adrenaline. Camille, I said, is Silverpine Hospitality Group a qualified buyer? Silence on the line. I could hear her typing. Technically, yes, she said. Silverpine meets the capital requirements. So, I said, my mind racing, if Grant's loans go into default, I could buy them. Yes, Camille said slowly. You could buy the debt from the trust. You would become the lender. Grant would owe the money to you, and I would control the collateral. I said, Natalie, Camille warned, that is aggressive. If you do that, you own him. I don't want to own him. Camille, I want to stop him. If I hold the debt, I can stop Spencer Vane from getting it. I can stop them from taking Mom's house. It is risky, she said. You would be using your reserves. If the resort has a bad opening season, you could go under too. I looked at the window, at the mountains standing stark against the blue sky. Prepare the paperwork, I said. Get Silverpine ready. If that debt hits the market, I want to be the first call. The invitation came by text. Family meeting, Mom's house, 7 p.m. Please come. It's important. It was from Diane. I arrived at 7 sharp. The house I grew up in looked the same as always. Manicured lawn, white shutters, an image of suburban perfection that hid the rot inside. I walked into the living room. Grant was there, sitting in my father's old leather chair. Diane was on the sofa, wringing her hands, and sitting on the ottoman, looking uncomfortable, was Wade Ellison, the banker. Natalie, Grant said, standing up, glad you could make it. He was wearing a suit, but he looked disheveled. His tie was loose. I stayed standing. What is this? We need to talk about the future, Wade said. He cleared his throat. Natalie, Robinson Meridian Partners is facing some headwinds. Headwinds, I repeated. That is a polite way to say insolvency. Grant's jaw tightened. We have a liquidity gap. That's all. But we have a solution. A way to strengthen the whole family portfolio. He picked up a document from the coffee table and held it out to me. I did not take it. I just looked at it. It is a partnership agreement, Wade said quickly. It brings you in as a minority stakeholder in Grant's firm. You inject capital, $5 million now, with a guarantee for another 5. And in exchange, you get 20% equity. I laughed. It was a short, dry sound. You want me to buy 20% of a sinking ship for $5 million? It is not sinking, Grant shouted. He paced the room. It is a temporary crunch. I have assets. I have land. You have debt. Grant, I said, you have toxic debt. Wade leaned forward. Natalie, listen. The bank is willing to restructure the whole package, but we need a guarantor. Someone with clean assets. If you sign this, we can refinance everything, lower the rates, save the projects. I looked at Wade. Who drafted this? I asked. He blinked. What? Who drafted the guarantee language? I asked. Because it looks very specific. Wade looked away. He looked at the floor, then at Grant, our legal team. He mumbled. I looked at Diane. She was staring at her lap. Mom, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were wet. Did you sign anything recently? I asked. Grant stepped between us. Leave her out of this. I stepped around him. Mom, did you sign a guarantee for $12 million? Diane's lip trembled. Grant told me it was just to update the accounts. He said it was routine. I looked at Grant. He was red in the face. You lied to her. I said. You told her it was routine, and you had her sign a death warrant for her financial future. I did what I had to do, Grant yelled. I am trying to save this family. You are hoarding your money up on that mountain while I am out here fighting in the trenches. You are not fighting, I shouted back, my voice finally rising. You are gambling. And now that you have lost, you want me to pay the house dealer. I looked at the document on the table. I will not sign it. I said, I will not give you a dime, and I will not guarantee your bad decisions. Grant looked at me with pure hatred. You are cold, he spat. You are a cold, ungrateful bitch. Dad was right about you. You don't care about anyone but yourself. I looked at him. I looked at the brother I had once followed around like a puppy, the brother who had taught me to ride a bike. He was gone, consumed by his own ego and the desperate need to be the big man. I turned to Diane. Mom, I said gently, do not sign anything else. Not a birthday card, not a check, nothing, until you show it to me. She just sobbed. I turned to Wade. And you, I said, you are a fiduciary. Wade, if I find out you knew about the forged signature, if I find out you are facilitating fraud, I will not just sue you. I will have your license. Wade went pale. I walked to the door. You are making a mistake, Grant screamed after me. You think you are safe? You think you can just walk away? You have no idea what is coming for you. I walked out into the cool night air. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I got into my truck and locked the doors. I dialed Camille. She answered on the first ring. I was right. I said, my voice shaking, they are desperate. And Grant admitted to the signature, or enough of it. Are you okay? Camille asked. No, I said, I am not okay. I looked back at the house. The lights were blazing. I think someone is using Mom's name. I said, I think Grant is just a puppet, and I think they are going to come after the resort harder now, because I just said no to their easy out. Then we get ready. Camille said, we prepare for war. I put the truck in gear. Do it, I said. Trigger the acquisition. I want that debt. I drove away, leaving the perfect suburban house behind me. I was done being the little sister. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one, but they were going to find out that I did not fight like Grant. I did not bluster. I did not gamble. I calculated, and I executed. The notification arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, a digital ping that sounded innocuous, but carried the weight of an executioner's axe. I was in the back office of the resort, reviewing the linen par levels with the housekeeping manager, when my phone screen lit up. Sender, Camille Hart. Subject, ACCT, liquidity notice, time sensitive. I excused myself and walked into the hallway. Finding a quiet corner near the unfinished ballroom, I opened the attachment. It was a formal notice from the trustee of the Alder Creek Capital Trust. The pool of commercial notes, the one that held my brother's debt, was facing what they called liquidity stress. I called Camille immediately. It is happening, she said. Her voice was clipped. Professional. The trust is undercapitalized. They have triggered the early disposition clause. They need to shed assets to balance their books before the quarter closes. Explain the mechanism again. I said, I needed to hear it. I needed to be sure. Camille took a breath. Because Silver Pine Hospitality Group is already vetted as a qualified institutional buyer, and because you have standing capital reserves, we can submit a bid for the distressed tranche. We do not have to negotiate with the borrowers. We negotiate with the trust. If they accept our price, we step into their shoes. And the borrowers? I asked. They get a notice of assignment, Camille said. That's all. They wake up the next morning, and they owe the money to you instead of the bank. I looked out the window. The snow was falling again. Thick, heavy flakes that obscured the tree line. Grant was out there somewhere, likely scrambling, likely lying to another investor, completely unaware that the ground beneath him was being sold by the square foot. If I do this, I said, I become his creditor. Yes, Camille said. You hold the paper, you control the timeline, you can call the default, or you can offer forbearance. You hold the whip. I closed my eyes. I did not want a whip. I wanted a shield. Prepare the bid, I said, but do not submit it yet. I want to see the updated aging report on the loans. I hung up. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. This was business. It was high level, aggressive finance, but it felt like fratricide. That night, I could not sleep. The silence of my rental cabin was oppressive. At 2:00 in the morning, I found myself in the kitchen, wearing my pajamas, scrubbing the grout between the counter tiles with an old toothbrush. My mother would have been proud, or maybe horrified. She had always taught us that a clean house was a sign of a clean conscience. I rubbed at a spot of coffee stain until the white ceramic gleamed. I was not trying to destroy Grant. I told myself that with every stroke of the brush, I was trying to contain him. If I did not buy that debt, someone else would. Someone like Spencer Vane. And Vane would not offer forbearance. Vane would strip the assets and leave Grant destitute. But there was a darker voice in my head, one I tried to drown out with the sound of running water. The voice that whispered, "He deserves it. He mocked you. He forged Mom's signature. He tried to ruin you." I rinsed the cloth and folded it. Then I unfolded it. Then I folded it again, lining up the corners perfectly. 1, 2, 3. I needed control. My life had become a series of reactions, reacting to Grant's lies, to the sabotage, to the legal threats. I needed to stop reacting and start dictating the terms of engagement. I put the cloth down. My hands were red from the hot water. I am not doing this for revenge. I whispered to the empty room, I am doing this for survival. 2 days later, the war moved from the shadows to the airwaves. I was driving to the site when I heard it. The local radio station, K. Alder, was broadcasting the morning business report. And in local development news, Grant Robinson of Robinson Meridian Partners announced this morning a major strategic pivot. His firm will be partnering with a major hospitality brand, sources say the new Lake Glass Ridge Resort, to co-develop a series of luxury condos along the river. Robinson stated that this family alliance will secure the economic future of Alder Creek for the next decade. I slammed on the brakes, pulling onto the shoulder of the highway. Gravel crunched under my tires. He was lying. He was lying publicly, brazenly, using my brand to prop up his failing credibility. He was implying a partnership that did not exist to calm his nervous investors. My phone started blowing up. Texts from contractors, from the town council, from my own investors. Is this true? Why didn't you tell us? I thought you were independent. I stared at the steering wheel. If I stayed silent, I validated the lie. If I screamed, I looked like a hysterical sister. I dialed Camille. Draft a cease and desist, I said, immediate delivery, and draft a press release. She was already typing. I can hear it in your voice. Natalie, calm down. I am calm. I said, my voice was ice. I want the statement to be surgical, no emotion, no drama. 30 minutes later, the statement went live on our website and was sent to the local paper. Lake Glass Ridge is an independently owned and operated entity solely under the control of Silver Pine Hospitality Group. We have no current partnerships, joint ventures, or development agreements with Robinson Meridian Partners, nor are any such agreements under consideration. Our focus remains exclusively on the opening of our resort and the service of our guests. It was dry, it was boring, and it cut the legs out from under him completely. By noon, the radio station had issued a correction. Grant's narrative collapsed before it could take root. He did not call me. He did not text. His silence was louder than any scream. The retaliation came 3 days later, but not from Grant directly. It came through the supply chain. I was meeting with Jim Miller, the owner of Miller Linens. He had the contract to supply all our bedding, towels, and robes. It was a six-figure contract, vital for our opening. Jim sat in my office, twisting his baseball cap in his hands. He looked miserable. "Natalie," he said, I might have to pull out of the contract." I put my pen down. "Talk to me." "Jim, we have a signed agreement. The first delivery is due next week." "I know." He said, "I know. But, look, I cannot give you names, but I was approached yesterday. Another firm. They offered to buy out my entire inventory for the next 6 months. Cash up front, double what you are paying." "Double?" I asked. "That is above market rate. No one pays double unless they are desperate, or unless they are trying to hurt someone else." Jim looked at the floor. The condition was exclusive. "Natalie, they said I had to prioritize them, which means I would have to delay your order by 8 weeks. 8 weeks would push us past our opening date. We would open a luxury resort without towels. It would be a disaster." It was Grant, or rather, it was the money behind Grant. He was trying to bleed me dry by cutting off my logistics. "Jim," I said. I leaned forward. "I am not going to offer you double. I cannot afford to pay double. And frankly, it is bad business." Jim sighed. "I have to look out for my family." "Natalie, it is a lot of money." "I know it is." I said, "But let me ask you a question. Will they pay you next year? Will they pay you the year after that?" He looked up. "I pay my invoices on the first of the month." I said, "Every month. You have seen my credit references. I am building a business that will be here for 30 years. This offer? It is a bribe. Jim, it is a one-time hit to damage me. Once I am damaged, do you think they will keep paying you double? Or do you think they will drop you the moment you are no longer useful?" I held his gaze. Loyalty is a currency. "Jim, I am offering you a partnership. They are offering you a transaction. Which one builds your business?" Jim stared at me for a long moment. Then he put his cap back on his head. "You are right," he said. "My gut told me it was shady. Cash in a briefcase type stuff." He stood up and offered his hand. "The trucks will be here on Monday. Natalie, as promised. Thank you." "Jim." I watched him leave. I had won. But the victory felt precarious. They were throwing cash around like it was confetti. That meant they had deep pockets, deeper than Grant's. The next attack was digital. It was a Tuesday. The resort was buzzing with pre-opening activity. Housekeeping was doing a dry run of the room turnover process. The front desk staff was training on the reservation system. Suddenly, Tessa burst into my office. "We have a problem," she said. "What is it?" "The system." She said, "It just crashed. And when it came back up, look." She turned her tablet toward me. The reservation grid was full. Every single room for opening weekend was booked. "That is impossible," I said. "We have not opened bookings to the general public yet. Look at the names." Tessa said. I scrolled down. John Doe, Jane Doe, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and then, interspersed with the fake names, was a legitimate-looking group booking, VIP delegation, senator's office. "Is that real?" I asked. I called the senator's office. Tessa said, "They have no idea what I'm talking about, but the system sent out confirmation emails. It triggered automatic car service requests. We have limos heading to the airport right now to pick up ghost guests. Cancel them." I said, "Shut down the external portal." "I already did," Tessa said. "But here's the interesting part. I had our IT guy trace the IP address of the intrusion. And it was not a random hacker," she said. "It came from a static IP, a co-working space in Denver. We cross-referenced the lease on the suite that used that IP at that timestamp." She tapped the screen. "The suite is leased to a company called Apex Solutions, LLC. It is a shell company, but the registered agent?" She swiped to the next page. Spencer Vane. I felt a cold chill. Vane, the man my father had warned me about, the predator. He was not just funding Grant. He was actively participating in the sabotage. This was not a brother-sister squabble anymore. This was a corporate hit. "Get Camille," I said. Camille arrived an hour later. She looked tired. She had been digging through filings for 2 days straight. "You were right about Vane," she said, spreading papers across my desk. "He is bad news. He has been sued 6 times for predatory lending practices. He settles every time to keep it out of court." "And the link to Wade Ellison?" I asked. Wade was the banker who had tried to push me into the partnership. Camille pulled out a document. It was an old deed of trust from 5 years ago. "Look at the notary," she said. I looked. Wade Ellison. "Now look at the beneficiary. Vane Capital Management. Wade has been funneling distressed borrowers to Vane for years." Camille said, "It is a pipeline. Wade identifies the weak sheep, the builders who are overleveraged, the businesses with cash flow problems, and he steers them to Vane for alternative financing. Vane lends them money at impossible terms, and when they default, he takes their assets, and Wade gets a kickback." I felt sick. Wade had sat in my mother's living room, drinking her tea, pretending to be a family friend. All the while, he was serving us up on a platter. "They want the resort." I said, "It became clear to me in a rush of horrifying clarity. They do not care about Grant's firm. Grant is already dead to them. They are using Grant to get to me. They want to force me to merge with Grant, so that when Grant collapses, the resort gets pulled into the bankruptcy. Vane wants to acquire Lake Glass Ridge for pennies on the dollar." "Exactly," Camille said. "It is a classic bust-out scheme." I stood up and walked to the window. The mountains looked sharp, indifferent to our small human corruptions. "I need to meet him." I said. "Who?" Camille asked. "Spencer Vane." I set up the meeting through a mutual acquaintance, framing it as a potential interest in a strategic partnership. I knew Vane would take it. Men like him could never resist the smell of a new deal. We met in the lobby of a high-end hotel in Denver. Vane was younger than I expected, maybe 45. He was fit, tanned, wearing a suit that fit him like a second skin. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a tennis pro. "Natalie Robinson," he said, standing to shake my hand. His grip was dry and firm. "I have heard a lot about you." I sat down. "I imagine you have, Mr. Vane, please, call me Spencer." I kept my hands folded on the table. "I will stick to Mr. Vane." He smiled, a small, amused smile. "Fair enough. Discipline. I like that. Your brother could use some of that." He threw Grant under the bus in the first 30 seconds. It was a test. He wanted to see if I would defend him. "My brother has his own methods," I said neutrally. Vane chuckled. He signaled the waiter for water. "His methods are currently failing, Ms. Robinson, but you know that. That is why you are here. I am here because I understand you hold a significant position in the local debt market." I said, "I dabble," he said. I looked him in the eye. "I know you are squeezing Grant, and I know you are behind the disruption at my resort, the fake reviews, the IP address." Vane did not blink. He did not deny it. He just leaned back and studied me. "You are direct," he said. "I appreciate that. Let us cut the chase. Your brother is a drowning man. You are standing on the shore with a life raft. You can throw it to him, merge your assets, guarantee his loans, and we can all make a lot of money. Or—" He paused, letting the silence hang. "Or?" I asked. "Or you can let him drown." Vane said softly, "You can buy his debt, put him in a box, take over his projects. I could facilitate that for you. For a fee, of course." He was offering to switch sides. He did not care about Grant. He did not care about me. He just wanted to be on the winning side of the trade. He was testing my morality. He wanted to know if I was a shark like him, if I buy the debt. I said, "I control the outcome." "Precisely." Vane said, "You can be the hero or the villain, though in my experience, the difference is just a matter of PR. I looked at him. He was soulless. He viewed human lives as line items on a spreadsheet. "If I don't buy it?" I asked. "Who does?" Vane smiled. It was a cold, empty expression. "Someone who won't care who gets hurt. Someone who will take your mother's house just to make a point." He took a sip of water. "Think about it. Natalie, the debt is hitting the market soon. You can own it, or you can fight the person who does. And I promise you, fighting me is very expensive. I stood up. Thank you for your time. Mr. Vane. I walked away. My legs were steady, but inside I was shaking. He had confirmed everything. He was going to consume my family unless I consumed the debt first. My leverage was no longer just about power. It was about responsibility. I was the only thing standing between my family and total annihilation. I drove back to Alder Creek in a daze. When I got to my cabin, I saw a car parked in the driveway, a familiar sedan, my mother. I parked and walked to her car. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring straight ahead. She looked terrified. "Mom," I said, opening the door. She looked at me, and her face crumpled. "Natalie," she sobbed, I think I did something bad." "Come inside," I said. I made her tea. We sat on the couch. She was trembling so hard the cup rattled against the saucer. "Tell me," I said gently. "It was months ago," she whispered, "before the gala." Grant came over. He was manic, happy, but too happy. He said he needed me to sign some papers for the bank. He said it was just standard updates for the trust. "And you signed them?" He flipped the pages so fast. She said, "He kept talking, telling me about this big deal, about how he was going to make us all rich. I trusted him. Natalie, he is my son." I took her hand. "Did you read them?" "No," she whispered. "I just signed where he pointed." I closed my eyes. It was classic manipulation, the urgency, the distraction, the exploitation of trust. Today. She continued, wiping her eyes. "I got a letter. From a bank. They said there is a lien on the house, a second mortgage, for $500,000. She looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. "I did not borrow $500,000. Natalie, I own the house free and clear. Your father paid it off 10 years ago." I squeezed her hand. "Grant borrowed it, Mom. He used your power of attorney, or the document you signed, to leverage the house." She started to cry again, a low, keening sound. How could he? How could he do that to me? I did not shame her. I did not say "I told you so." That is how they win. "Mom," I said softly, "they use the fact that we love them against us. They weaponize our trust." I stood up. "You are going to stay here tonight," I said, "and tomorrow we are going to fix this." I walked into the kitchen and called Camille. "It is worse than we thought," I said. "Grant mortgaged Mom's house. Vane probably holds that paper too." "We need to move," Camille said. "Now, what is the plan?" I asked. 2 tracks, Camille said. "Track 1, defense. We lock down the resort, enhanced cybersecurity, documented inspections. We make Lake Glass Ridge a fortress that Vane cannot breach. And track 2? Offense," Camille said. "We acquire the debt. We buy the commercial notes from the trust. If we hold the primary debt, we can force a stay on the other creditors. We can shield your mother's house by wrapping it into a global settlement." "Do it," I said. "Submit the bid." Camille asked. "Submit the bid." I said, "Use the full reserve." The next 24 hours were a blur of paperwork. I signed documents until my hand cramped. I transferred funds. I authorized background checks. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the wind to change. At 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, I was standing on the deck of the resort, looking out over the lake. The water was gray, reflecting the storm clouds. My phone buzzed. Sender: Camille Hart. Subject: confirmation. I opened it. Bid accepted. Silverpine Hospitality Group is now the approved buyer for the Class B tranche of Alder Creek Capital Trust. Settlement scheduled for Monday morning. I lowered the phone. I had done it. Come Monday morning, I would no longer just be Grant's little sister. I would be his primary creditor. I would own the paper that controlled his life. I was one step away from holding the power to save him or destroy him. And for the first time in my life, Grant Robinson was going to have to listen to me. I looked at the storm clouds gathering over the mountains. Let it storm. I thought, I am the shelter now. Monday morning arrived with the silence of a held breath. The mountains outside the window of Camille Hart's conference room were shrouded in a low gray mist that obscured the peaks, making the world feel small and contained. On the mahogany table sat a single, thin file folder. "It is done," Camille said. She did not smile. There was no champagne, no handshake of congratulations. This was not a victory. It was an amputation I had performed on my own family to save the patient. I opened the folder. The confirmation of wire transfer was stapled to the front. Silver Pine Hospitality Group had successfully acquired the Class B commercial notes from the Alder Creek Capital Trust. The sum was significant, enough to deplete my operating reserves to a level that made my accountant sweat. But the result was absolute. "I am the lender?" I asked, tracing the line on the paper. "You are the lender." Camille confirmed. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, you own the debt. Grant's obligations are now owed to Silver Pine. You have the right to call a default. You have the right to seize collateral. You have the right to demand an audit. Effectively, Natalie, you own the ground he is standing on." I closed the folder. I felt a strange heaviness in my chest. I had spent my life trying to get away from Grant's shadow, trying to build something that was purely mine. Now, I had bought his shadow. "Does he know?" I asked. "The trust sent the notice of assignment via courier this morning," Camille said, checking her watch. "He should be signing for it right about now," as if on cue. My phone, sitting face down on the table, began to vibrate against the wood. It was a harsh, angry sound. I picked it up. "Grant." I looked at Camille. She nodded once, a gesture of support. I answered, "Hello, Grant? You bitch?" His voice was a distortion, a raw tear in the air. He was screaming so loud the audio clipped. "You stole it. You went behind my back and you stole my debt. Is this what you wanted? You wanted to control me? You wanted to be daddy?" I held the phone away from my ear, letting his rage spill out into the quiet room. I waited until he ran out of breath, until the screaming turned into a ragged, gasping pant. I did not steal anything. "Grant," I said, keeping my voice low and steady, "I bought a distressed asset on the open market, an asset that was about to be sold to Spencer Vane, liar." He shouted, but the conviction was wobbling. "You planned this. You set me up. You worked with the bank to squeeze me so you could swoop in and buy me out for pennies. This is insider trading." "Natalie, this is fraud." "Grant, listen to me. I will sue you," he screamed. "I will bury you in litigation until that resort of yours is nothing but rotting timber. You think you are smart? You think you won? You have no idea what you just walked into. I didn't chase you." "Grant," I said, cutting through his noise with cold precision. "Your choices arrived at my door. You over-leveraged. You forged a signature. You got into bed with predators. I am the only reason you are not being eviscerated by Spencer Vane right now. I don't need your protection." He spat. "I need my company back." "You still have your company," I said, "but now you answer to me. And Grant?" "What?" he breathed. "If you scream at me again, I will hang up. And if I hang up, I will call the note due immediately." There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, hateful silence. Then the line went dead. I put the phone down. My hand was steady, but my heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "He is going to lash out," Camille said. "I know." I said, "He is a cornered animal, and cornered animals bite." The bite came 48 hours later. I was at the resort, overseeing the installation of the chandeliers in the grand lobby. It was a moment that should have been joyful, seeing the crystals catch the morning light, scattering rainbows across the stone floor. But the joy was interrupted by an email from my investor relations portal. "Urgent. Legal filing alert." Grant had filed a complaint in the district court. It was a messy, sprawling document alleging that I had used insider information obtained through family connections to manipulate the value of his debt and acquire it at an artificially depressed price. He threw around words like tortious interference and breach of fiduciary duty. It was legally flimsy. Camille told me on the phone that it would likely be dismissed in a summary judgment, but in the court of public opinion, and more importantly, In the eyes of my investors, it was a grenade. My lead investor, a conservative pension fund manager named David Thorne, called me within the hour. "Natalie," he said, his voice grave, "I am looking at a filing that accuses you of market manipulation. This is the kind of headline that makes my board very nervous. We back clean deals. This looks muddy. It is not muddy." "David," I said, "it is a distraction. I need more than assurance. Natalie, I need proof. If this gains traction, we might have to pause our final capital release. That capital release was essential for our opening payroll. If he paused it, we would open with empty bank accounts. I will send you the timeline." I said, "Every email, every timestamp. You will see that I had no contact with the trust until the public notice of distress. You will see that my Chinese wall is made of concrete." I spent the next 6 hours compiling a defense dossier. I did not eat. I did not drink water. I just pulled logs, printed emails, and highlighted dates. It was the unglamorous, grinding work of survival. When I sent the file to David Thorne, it was 100 pages long. "Review this," I typed. "The facts are the only thing that matters." He replied 20 minutes later, "Received. We are good. But keep this quiet. Opening day is 10 days away. You cannot afford a scandal." He was right. The resort was vulnerable. We were in the final, fragile state before launch. Like a butterfly just emerging from a chrysalis. Wings wet and soft. A single bad story. A single rumor of financial instability. And the bookings would evaporate. I walked out of my office and looked at the staff bustling through the hallway. They were young, energetic, proud of the uniforms they had just been issued. They had quit other jobs to come here. They were trusting me with their livelihoods. I could not let them be blindsided. I called an all-hands meeting in the dining room. 80 people gathered, looking at me with expectant faces. Rumors travel fast in a small town. I knew they had heard whispers about the lawsuit. I stood on a chair so I could see them all. "I want to address the noise you might be hearing," I said. My voice carried clearly over the room. "There is a legal dispute involving my family's business. You might read things in the paper. You might hear things at the grocery store." I paused, making eye contact with the front row. "Here is the truth. The resort is fully funded. Your paychecks are in the bank. Our opening date is fixed. I have legally acquired some external assets to protect this company, and that has caused some friction, but that friction stops at the front door." I held up a piece of paper. "This is a written guarantee." I said, "I am posting it in the break room. It states that there will be no layoffs and no operational cuts due to this litigation. I am absorbing the cost personally. You do not have to worry about your jobs. You just have to worry about making our guests happy." There was a beat of silence, and then applause broke out. It wasn't polite applause. It was relieved, enthusiastic applause. I stepped down from the chair. My legs felt weak. I was lying to them, just a little. I was absorbing the cost, yes. But if this dragged on for months, if David paused the funding, I would be bankrupt. I was shielding them with a shield made of glass. As the staff dispersed, Elijah Klein signaled me from the kitchen doorway. He looked pale. Elijah was usually the most solid person on the team, a man who could handle a broken pipe or a blizzard without blinking. But today, he looked like he had seen a ghost. "My office?" he asked. I followed him. He closed the door and locked it. He didn't sit down. He stood by the window, looking out at the service yard. "I have to tell you something," he said, "and you are probably going to fire me." I sat down. "I am tired of surprises." "Elijah, just say it. I used to work for Grant." He said. I froze. "You said you came from a resort in Vail." I did. He said, "But before that, 4 years ago, I was a project manager for Robinson Meridian. I worked on the Creekside condos." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. The betrayal felt like a small, sharp needle in my gut. "Because I knew you and he were estranged," he said, "and because of why I left." "Why did you leave?" "I saw the books," Elijah said. "I was managing the supply orders. I noticed that we were paying for materials that never arrived. Lumber, steel, high-end fixtures. The invoices were paid, but the trucks never came. I leaned forward. Phantom invoices? Worse, he said. He was cycling deposits. He would take the deposit money from the buyers of Unit A and use it to pay the contractors for Unit B. Then he would take the money from Unit C to pay for Unit A. It works as long as you keep selling, but the moment sales slow down, it collapses. I finished. It is a Ponzi scheme. Elijah nodded. I confronted him. He told me I didn't understand high finance. He told me to stick to pouring concrete. So I quit. I didn't report him because, well, he is powerful in this town, and I needed a reference. He turned to face me. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think I was compromised. I didn't want you to think I was his spy. I looked at him. I saw the fear in his eyes, but also the honesty. He could have kept this secret forever. He was telling me now because he knew I was in the fight of my life. I am not going to fire you. Elijah, I said. He let out a long breath. But I need to know everything. I said, you said he was cycling deposits. Was there anything else? Elijah hesitated. There was a meeting, right before I left. Grant was arguing with a guy in the job trailer. I didn't know who he was then, but I saw his picture in the paper recently. It was Spencer Vane. What were they arguing about? Leverage. Elijah said. Vane was offering him a lifeline, a hard money loan to cover the gap in the deposits. But Vane wanted collateral. He said Grant's equity wasn't enough. He wanted the matriarch's estate. My blood ran cold. The matriarch's estate. My mother's house. Grant told him he couldn't pledge it. Elijah said, he said the title was in Diane's name. And Vane laughed. He said, get a pen and a notary who likes cash. I don't care how you do it. Just get the signature. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just that Grant had forged the signature. It was that Vane had ordered it. Vane had solicited the fraud. Thank you. Elijah, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. This helps? He asked. It confirms everything. I said. I left the resort and drove straight to the county recorder's office. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I requested the file for 422 Maple Drive, my mother's address. The clerk handed me the document. I flipped to the back. There it was, a deed of trust. Recorded 3 months ago, a lien for $500,000. The lender was Vane Capital Management, and the signature, Diane Robinson. It was the same shaky, traced scrawl I had seen on the guarantee. I stared at the document. This was the trap. Vane held the mortgage on my mother's home. If Grant defaulted on the loan, which was inevitable, given his finances, Vane could foreclose. He could evict my mother, and he would do it. He would do it just to watch me bleed. He would use the house as a hostage to force me to hand over the resort. Give me Lake Glass Ridge, and I will let your mother keep her roof. I walked out of the recorder's office into the bright, blinding sunlight. I felt a cold rage settling in my bones. It was a clarifying sensation. I was done reacting. I pulled out my phone and dialed Grant. He answered on the second ring. He didn't scream this time. He sounded exhausted. What do you want? Natalie? I want to offer you a way out. I said, I am listening. I know about the deposit cycling. Grant, I know about the phantom invoices. Elijah Klein told me everything. Silence. And I just came from the recorder's office. I continued. I have the deed of trust for Mom's house in my hand. I know you forged it, and I know Vane told you to do it. Grant's breathing was shallow. You can't prove that. I don't have to prove it to a jury yet. Grant, I just have to prove it to you. Here's the deal. I waited, letting the tension build. I will offer you a structured forbearance on the debt I bought. I will pause all collection efforts. I will give you breathing room to finish your current projects and sell them legitimately. I will keep you out of bankruptcy. What is the catch? He asked. His voice was suspicious, trembling. 3 conditions. I said. 1. You sign an affidavit admitting that you signed Mom's name to the guarantee and the deed of trust without her knowledge. You want me to confess to a felony? He hissed. Condition 2. I said, ignoring him. You agree to independent financial oversight. I appoint an auditor who approves every check you write. You don't spend a dime without permission. And 3, you stop the smear campaign. You retract the lawsuit. You tell every person in this town that Silver Pine saved you." He laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "You want me to hand you a loaded gun and put the barrel in my mouth," he said. "If I sign that affidavit, you own me forever. You could send me to jail whenever you felt like it. I am trying to keep you out of jail." "Grant," I snapped. "If Vane forecloses on Mom's house, the fraud comes out anyway, and Vane won't offer you a deal. He will just feed you to the wolves." "I won't do it," he said. "I won't give you that satisfaction. I won't let you hold that over me. Grant, please. This is the only lifeboat. Go to hell." "Natalie," he said. He hung up. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the phone. He chose pride. He chose the lie. He would rather burn down the whole family than admit, on paper, that he had failed. I went back to the resort. It was late, past 9 o'clock. The construction crews had gone home. The building was quiet, smelling of sawdust and fresh paint. I sat in my office, staring at the wall. I had the leverage, but I couldn't use it. If I exposed the fraud to stop Vane, Grant went to prison. If I didn't expose it, Vane took the house. I was trapped in a moral checkmate. Then the fire alarm went off. It was a piercing, shrieking wail that shattered the silence. I jumped up, knocking my chair over. I ran into the hallway. The strobe lights were flashing, cutting the darkness into chaotic slices. "Fire!" someone yelled. It was the night security guard. "Bill, where?" I screamed, running toward him. "Storage. B, the linen room." My heart stopped. The linens, the towels, the bedding, the shipment Jim Miller had just delivered. If that burned, we couldn't open. We ran down the corridor. I could smell it now. Acrid smoke, the scent of burning cotton and plastic. Bill grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. I grabbed another. We burst into the storage room. The fire was in the corner. A pile of cardboard boxes engulfed in orange flames. The sprinklers hadn't triggered yet. Bill unleashed the chemical spray. White powder filled the air, choking us. I aimed my extinguisher at the base of the flames, squeezing the handle until my knuckles turned white. It took 2 minutes. 2 minutes of panic and coughing, but the fire died. We stood there, panting, covered in white dust. The damage was contained to a few boxes. The main inventory was safe. I coughed, wiping my eyes. Why didn't the sprinklers go off? Bill walked over to the sprinkler head in the corner. He shone his flashlight on it. He looked at me, his face grim. "Because it is taped," he said. I stepped closer. There was a piece of heavy duct tape wrapped around the sensor. "And look at the door," Bill said. He pointed to the lock. There were scratch marks on the plate. "This wasn't an accident. Ms. Robinson," he said. "Someone broke in. Someone set this." I felt my hands start to shake. A violent, uncontrollable tremor. I dropped the extinguisher. It clattered loudly on the concrete floor. This wasn't finance anymore. This wasn't lawsuits or affidavits. This was violence. They had tried to burn us down. I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I was crouching on the floor. I couldn't breathe. The smoke, the fear, the sheer exhaustion of it all crashed down on me. "Ms. Robinson?" Bill asked, stepping toward me. "Are you okay?" I looked at my hands. They were covered in soot. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. I stood up. The shaking didn't stop, but I forced my legs to hold my weight. "Call the police," I said. My voice was raspy. "And call the fire marshal. I want a report tonight." I walked back to my office. I didn't clean the soot off my face. I picked up my phone and called Camille. "They set a fire." I said, "Oh my God. Natalie, are you hurt?" "No, but they taped the sensors. They wanted it to spread. We need to go to the FBI." Camille said, "This is domestic terrorism." "No," I said, "if we bring in the feds, they shut down the site as a crime scene. We miss our opening. We go bankrupt. That is what Vane wants. Then what do? We escalate." I said, "Authorize full 24-hour security, armed guards, perimeter patrols. I want cameras on every inch of this property." "And the fraud?" Camille asked. I am done protecting him. I said, "Prepare the affidavit, not for Grant to sign, for me to sign. I am going to document everything I know about the forgery and the cyber attacks. We are going to build a case that is so airtight that when we finally drop it, it takes out everyone, Vane, Wade, Grant, all of them. It is dangerous." "Natalie, I know." I said, "But they just tried to burn my house down. I am done playing nice." I hung up. My phone buzzed again. A text message. It was from an unknown number. I opened it. "Drop the debt, or your resort becomes the story they remember you for." I stared at the screen. The threat was clear. They weren't done. The fire was just a warning shot. I typed a reply. I didn't know if they would receive it, but I needed to send it. "Come and take it." I put the phone down. I looked at my soot-stained reflection in the dark window. I didn't look like a hotelier. I looked like a soldier who had just survived the first wave. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the next wave was going to be bigger. The morning after the fire, the air in my office still carried the faint, acrid scent of burnt plastic, masked poorly by the aroma of strong coffee. Across the desk from me sat Detective Rayburn. He was a man of heavy silence, with eyes that seemed to weigh every object in the room before moving to the next. I did not offer him speculation. I offered him a binder. It was 3 inches thick, tabbed and color-coded. "This is the access log for the service gate," I said, pointing to the first tab. "It shows an entry at 10:14 p.m. using a cloned credential. The credential belonged to a vendor named Miller Linens, but Mr. Miller has confirmed his badge was in his possession at his home." Rayburn opened the binder. He ran a thick finger down the column of timestamps. "And this?" he asked, flipping to the next section. "Cybersecurity logs," I said. "These show the unauthorized access to our reservation system 3 days ago. The IP address traces to a shell company in Denver. And here's the report from the fire marshal regarding the taped sensor in the linen closet." I sat back, folding my hands in my lap. My hands were steady. I had scrubbed the soot from my skin, but I felt like it was still there, embedded in my pores. Rayburn closed the binder. He looked at me for a long time. "Most people," he said slowly, "when they are targeted like this, they come to me with a lot of feelings. They scream about who they think did it. They wave their arms. I am not most people." I said, "Feelings are not evidence." "No." He agreed. "They are not." "But this binder? This is forensic." He tapped the cover. "Whoever is doing this to you, Ms. Robinson, they are not kids throwing rocks at windows, taping a sensor, cloning a badge. That takes planning. It takes inside knowledge of the building layout." He leaned forward. "This is professional," he said. "You are not dealing with a vandal. You are dealing with a contractor." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. I knew who the contractor was, or at least, I knew who was paying him. Spencer Vane. But I could not say that name yet, not without proof that would stick. If I accused a prominent financier of arson without a direct link, I would look like I was hysterical, and Vane would sue me for defamation before the ink on the police report was dry. "I suspect there is a coordinated effort to disrupt my business," I said carefully. Rayburn stood up, tucking the binder under his arm. "We will pull the traffic cams on the access road," he said. "If they came in a vehicle, we will find it. In the meantime, Ms. Robinson, yes? Get more guards," he said. "Professional ones. Because if they failed to burn you down last night, they are going to try something else. People who get paid to do a job do not usually give up because of one bad night." I took his advice. By noon, I had authorized a contract with a private security firm. Men in dark uniforms stood at every entrance. The resort, which was supposed to be a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a green zone. But the attack did not come from the perimeter. It came from the television screen in the employee break room. I was walking through to check on the lunch service when I saw it. A local news channel was broadcasting live from the courthouse steps. And there was Grant. He looked terrible. His skin was gray. His suit hung loosely on his frame, and his eyes were rimmed with red. But he had found a microphone, and he was clinging to it like a lifeline. "My sister," he was saying. his voice trembling with a practiced sort of grief, has decided to turn a family business dispute into a war. She has used private family secrets, things I told her in confidence, things about our parents, to trap me. I stopped walking. The room went silent. 2 line cooks froze, spatulas in hand, watching the screen. She bought my debt not to help me, Grant continued, looking directly into the camera, but to control me. She wants to ruin my reputation to inflate her own. It is a hostile takeover disguised as a rescue, and frankly, it breaks my heart. The reporter thrust a microphone forward. Mr. Robinson, are you saying she engineered your financial trouble? I am saying she took advantage of it. Grant said, she waited until I was down, and then she put her boot on my neck. That is not what family does. That is what a predator does. I felt the eyes of my staff on me. They were wondering if it was true. They were wondering if the woman who signed their paychecks was a monster who ate her own brother for sport. I did not turn the TV off. I did not storm out. I walked over to the coffee machine, poured a cup, and took a sip. Then I turned to the room. The shuttle schedule for opening weekend is finalized, I said, keeping my voice conversational. Please make sure the drivers have the updated routes. Then I walked out, back in my office. I called Camille. Did you see it? She asked. I saw it. We need to respond. She said, he is winning the sympathy vote. The narrative is shifting. People love a tragic hero, and he is playing the part perfectly. I looked out the window at the mountains. They were indifferent to our noise. No, I said, we do not argue with a liar. If I defend myself, I look guilty. If I attack him, I look cruel. So we do nothing? We issue one statement. I said, write this down. I waited until I heard her typing. Ms. Robinson's focus is entirely on the safety of her guests and the success of Lake Glass Ridge. The financial matters regarding Robinson Meridian Partners are documented in public filings. I will let facts speak. That's it? Camille asked. That's it. I hung up. Grant wanted a mud fight. He wanted me to get down in the dirt with him, to scream about the forgery and the lies. If I did that, the story became Family Feud. It became entertainment, and entertainment would scare away my investors by staying silent, by staying cold. I became the wall he was throwing himself against. Eventually, he would run out of energy, or so I hoped. 2 hours later, Camille called back. Her tone was different, sharper. I found something. She said, what? I was reviewing the loan documents from the note pool you bought, the original origination files from the bank. And? There is a compliance waiver, Camille said. It is buried in the appendix of the 3rd tranche. It waives the requirement for independent collateral verification on the Robinson Meridian loans. Translate that for me. Camille, it means the bank agreed not to check if the buildings Grant claimed he was building actually existed. Camille said, they just took his word for it. That is a massive violation of banking risk policy. No loan officer would sign that unless they were either incompetent or compromised. Who signed it? I asked. Wade Ellison, she said. I let out a breath. Wade, the family friend, the man who had sat in my mother's living room and smiled. He signed a waiver that allowed Grant to borrow against heir. I said, yes, Camille said, and since Wade is a senior officer at the bank, that puts him on the hook. If this comes out, he loses his license. He might even face federal charges for bank fraud. He is the weak link. I said, he is the pressure point. Camille corrected. Bring him to me. I said, not to the office, not to a lawyer's room. Bring him to the resort. I chose the library for the meeting. It was my favorite room in the resort, though it was not quite finished. The shelves were made of raw walnut, and the air smelled of sawdust and lemon oil. It was quiet, insulated from the rest of the building. Wade Ellison arrived at 4 o'clock. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He was wearing a trench coat, and he kept checking his phone. I was standing by the fireplace, which was cold and empty. Hello? Wade, I said. Natalie, he said. He tried to smile, but his lip caught on his teeth. I was surprised to get your call. I thought we were adversarial. We are, I said. I motioned to a leather armchair. Sit down. He sat. He perched on the edge of the cushion, ready to bolt. I am going to keep this simple. Wade, I said, I am not recording this conversation. My lawyer is not here. It is just you and me. I held up a single piece of paper. It was a copy of the compliance waiver Camille had found. I know about the waiver, I said. Wade's face went the color of old ash. He stared at the paper. That is standard procedure for high net worth clients. He stammered. Do not lie to me, I said softly. I checked your bank's risk manual. This waiver is a fireable offense. It is gross negligence, and considering that the loans are now toxic, it looks a lot like conspiracy to commit fraud. Wade swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed. What do you want? He whispered. I want the truth. I said, I want to know why you did it. Grant does not have the influence to make you risk your career. You are a cautious man. Wade, you do not gamble unless the house guarantees a win. He looked down at his hands. They were trembling. I walked over to him. I stood over the chair. I am filing a civil suit against Grant next week. I said, I can name you as a co-defendant. I can subpoena your emails. I can depose your entire staff. I paused. Or you can tell me what is really going on, and I will keep your name out of the initial filing. I will give you a chance to resign quietly before the storm hits. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. It was Spencer, he said. His voice was so quiet, I barely heard him. Spencer Vane? Wade nodded. He came to me a year ago. He knew Grant was in trouble. He knew Grant was desperate. Spencer offered to buy the bad paper, but he needed the portfolio to look bigger. He wanted Grant to inflate the assets so the eventual write-down would be massive. Why, I asked? Why would Vane want a massive write-down? Because he is shorting the regional development bond, Wade said. The room seemed to tilt. He is shorting the bond? I repeated. Wade nodded miserably. The town issued a municipal bond to fund the infrastructure for your resort and the new condos. Vane bet against it. If Grant collapses, and if your resort gets dragged into the scandal, the bond rating crashes. Vane makes $20 million overnight. I stared at him. It was so much bigger than I had imagined. It wasn't just about stealing my property. It was about tanking the entire town's economy for a profit. And you? I asked. What did you get? A job, Wade whispered. He promised me a VP role at Vane Capital, double my salary. I just had to facilitate the paperwork. And the signature? I asked. The guarantee on my mother's house? Wade closed his eyes. Spencer's guy provided the tracing. He gave it to Grant. He told Grant that Diane would never notice, that it was just a formality to satisfy the underwriters. He coached him. Natalie. He told Grant exactly what to say to your mother to get her to sign the other papers. I felt a surge of nausea. Vane had engineered the destruction of my family from the ground up. He had used Grant's greed and Wade's ambition to build a bomb, and he had set the timer to go off on my opening day. One more thing, Wade said. He looked at me with terrified eyes. What? He never intended to save Grant. The plan was always to let Grant implode. But the real target, the real prize, is you. Me? They want you to panic, Wade said. They want the scandal to be so bad, the lawsuit so heavy, that you are forced to sell the resort to settle the debts. Vane wants Lake Glass Ridge. He wants to buy it for 30 cents on the dollar, claiming he is stabilizing the town after the Robinson family destroyed it. I turned away. I walked to the window. It was a masterclass in villainy. Vane was going to burn us down, collect the insurance, short the ashes, and then buy the land for cheap. Get out, I said. Wade stood up. Natalie, please. I didn't know he was going to go this far. I didn't know about the fire. I turned on him. You sold my mother's security for a job promotion. Wade, get out of my building before I forget that I'm a civilized woman. He ran. I heard his footsteps echoing down the hallway. I stood alone in the smell of fresh wood, realizing that the game I was playing was not poker. It was Russian roulette, and Vane held the gun. I sat in the library for an hour. The light faded outside, turning the snow blue. I had a choice. I could destroy Grant. I had the evidence now. I had Wade's confession. I could go to the press, release the documents, and prove that my brother was a fraud and a puppet. I could clear my name, but if I did that, I validated the story. The Robinson family is toxic. They are at war. They are unstable. Investors would flee. Guests would cancel. Vane would win because the chaos would still tank the bond rating, and I would be exactly what Grant called me: ruthless. But if I protected Grant, if I covered it up to save the family name, then he learned nothing. He would continue to be a liability, and Vane would still hold the mortgage on Mom's house. I needed a third way. I called Camille. Draft a settlement conference notice. I said, for who? For everyone. I said, Grant, Robinson Meridian, and notify Spencer Vane's counsel as an interested party since they hold the secondary lien. What is the angle? Camille asked. It is a trap. I said, we are going to demand full disclosure of all communications regarding the loan origination. If Grant lies in that room, it is perjury. If Vane interferes, it is obstruction. We are going to get them under oath. The settlement conference was scheduled for Friday, 2 days before opening, but before that, I needed to see Grant, alone. I sent him a text. No lawyers, no family, just you and me. The maintenance shed at the resort, midnight. If you don't come, I release the Wade Ellison file to the DA tomorrow morning. He came. The maintenance shed was cold. It smelled of gasoline and cold metal. A single bulb hung from the ceiling. Grant walked in. He looked like an old man. The swagger was gone. The suit was wrinkled. He hadn't shaved in 2 days. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw the brother I used to know, the one who was afraid of the dark. You look tired, I said. He leaned against a workbench. You won. Nat. Okay? You won. Are you happy? I am not happy. Grant. I said, I am exhausted. I took a folder out of my bag and slid it across the workbench. What is this? He asked. He didn't touch it. It is a forbearance agreement. I said. He frowned. Forbearance? I am offering to pause the debt. I said, I will not call the notes due. I will not foreclose on your projects. I will assume the payments on Mom's house to stop Vane from taking it. He stared at me. He couldn't process it. He expected a kill shot, and I was offering a bandage. Why? He asked. Because I am not you. I said. He reached out and opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. Then he stopped. His face hardened. An auditor? He said. Read the rest. I said, you want to appoint an independent trustee, he said, his voice rising. You want to strip me of executive control. I would be a figurehead. I wouldn't be able to sign a check over $500 without permission. Yes, I said. And I have to admit to the forgery? In a sworn affidavit? Yes. He slammed the folder shut. No, he said. Grant, listen to me. No, he shouted. You want to castrate me? You want to turn me into your little pet. Grant the failure. Grant the fraud. You want to keep me around just to show everyone how merciful you are. I want to keep you out of prison, I yelled back. My voice echoed off the metal walls. Wade rolled on you. Grant. He told me everything. He told me about Vane. He told me about the coaching. If I hand Wade to the police, you go away for 20 years. He froze. Wade. Wade wouldn't. He did. I said, he saved himself. Grant leaned back against the wall. He slid down until he was sitting on the dirty concrete floor. He put his head in his hands. I just wanted to fix it, he whispered. I just wanted one big win. Just one. So Dad would stop looking at me like I was a mistake. I looked at him. My heart broke. Just a little. We were both just children trying to survive our father's ghost. Sign the paper. Grant, I said softly. It is the only way your employees keep their jobs. It is the only way Mom keeps her house. He looked up. His eyes were wet, but there was something else in them. Something hard. Pride. Toxic. Fatal pride. I can't, he said. Grant, I can't be your charity case. Natalie, I would rather be destroyed than be owned by my little sister. He stood up. He brushed the dust off his pants. "You do what you have to do," he said. He walked to the door. "Grant, if you walk out, there is no coming back." I said. He didn't look back. "I will see you in court," he said. He walked out into the night. The next morning, the notification hit my phone at 6 a.m. Emergency motion filed. Robinson Meridian Partners versus Silver Pine Hospitality Group. Grant had filed for an emergency injunction to freeze my enforcement rights. He claimed that I had obtained the debt through fraudulent means and that my hostile actions were causing irreparable harm to his business. It was a desperation move. It had zero legal merit. But it did one thing effectively. It created a public spectacle. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing for Monday morning. Monday morning, 9 a.m., the exact same time we were scheduled to cut the ribbon for the opening of Lake Glass Ridge. I stood on the terrace of the resort. The sun was just cresting over the peaks, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Below me, the valets were arriving, putting on their new uniforms. The landscapers were blowing snow off the walkways. The kitchen staff was prepping for the first breakfast service. It was perfect. It was everything I had worked for. And 20 miles away, in a sterile courtroom, my brother was preparing to burn it all down to save his ego. I realized then that I could not be in two places at once. I could not be the gracious host cutting the ribbon and the vicious litigator fighting for my life. I gripped the railing. The cold metal bit into my palms. I had to choose. I watched the workers below. I saw Elijah directing a delivery truck. I saw Tessa organizing the front desk team. I knew what I had to do. I pulled out my phone and texted Camille. "Get the team ready. I will be in court on Monday." "But the opening?" she replied. "Tessa can cut the ribbon." I typed, "I have a fire to put out." I looked at the rising sun. The opening day and the courtroom day were going to collide, and I had to win both. The morning of opening day broke with a sky so blue it looked like it had been painted on the ceiling of a cathedral. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and the faint, expensive scent of the wood smoke drifting from the lodge's chimneys. It was the kind of morning I had dreamed about for 3 years. It was the morning I was supposed to stand on the grand staircase, holding a pair of ceremonial scissors, and welcome the world to Lake Glass Ridge. Instead, I was in the service corridor, checking the lint trap on a commercial dryer. I was not hiding. I was grounding myself. I walked the property at 6 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours before the first scheduled arrival. I greeted the valet team, checking that their uniforms were pressed and their earpieces were functioning. I stopped in the kitchen, where the executive chef was inspecting a delivery of local trout. I nodded to the housekeeping staff, who were moving with the quiet efficiency of a tactical unit. Everything was perfect. The brass railings gleamed, the flower arrangements in the lobby, wildflowers and aspen branches, were architectural masterpieces. The resort was breathing, alive, ready, and I had to leave it. I found Tessa Marlowe near the front desk. She was wearing her dress uniform, looking every inch the general manager she was. "You have the scissors?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes were sad. "Natalie, you should be the one to do this." I straightened the lapel of her blazer. "If I stay, I am distracted." I said, "I will be checking my phone every 5 minutes. The guests will smell the anxiety on me. You cut the ribbon. Tessa, you built this team. Make them proud." "I will," she said. I walked out through the side entrance, avoiding the gathering press who were setting up their cameras for the ribbon cutting. They wanted a puff piece about a luxury resort. They did not know that the real story was happening 20 miles away, in a windowless courtroom in the county seat. I got into my truck. Camille was in the passenger seat. She had a stack of files on her lap. "Ready?" she asked. "No," I said, starting the engine. "But let us go anyway." The courtroom was sterile, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a sharp, violent contrast to the warmth of the resort. Grant was already there, sitting at the plaintiff's table. He was wearing a charcoal suit that looked slightly too big for him, as if he had shrunk inside it over the last week. His lawyer was a man named Garrison, a sharp-featured litigator from Denver, known for courtroom theatrics. He stood up as soon as the judge entered. Your Honor, Garrison began, his voice booming. We are here today because of a tragedy, not a physical one, but a familial one. My client, Grant Robinson, built a business from nothing. He spent 20 years developing the economy of this valley. And now? Now he is being dismantled, piece by piece, by his own sister. I sat perfectly still. I did not look at Grant. I looked at the judge, a woman named Justice Hallowell, who had a reputation for suffering no fools. Garrison continued, pacing in front of the bench. The defendant, Natalie Robinson, used her intimate knowledge of my client's private financial struggles shared in confidence during family dinners to engineer a hostile takeover. She purchased his debt not to collect on it, but to weaponize it. She is using insider information to drive her brother into insolvency, purely out of spite. We are asking for an immediate injunction to stop her from enforcing these notes. He paused for effect, looking back at me with a sneer. She is a vengeful sister. Your Honor, she is using the court as a therapy session for her childhood grievances. I felt a flash of heat in my chest, but I breathed through it. 1, 2, 3. Camille stood up. She did not pace. She stood behind the table, solid as a rock. Your Honor, she said, her voice cool and measured. Mr. Garrison tells a compelling story, but we deal in facts, and the facts are simple. She lifted a document. Fact 1. Robinson Meridian Partners has been in breach of its loan covenants for 6 months. This is documented in their own quarterly reports. Fact 2. The Alder Creek Capital Trust, which held the debt, issued a public notice of liquidity stress. This was not a secret family dinner conversation. It was a market event. She placed the document down and picked up another. Fact 3. My client, Silver Pine Hospitality Group, is a qualified institutional buyer. She submitted a bid through standard channels. She paid fair market value. She did not steal this debt. She bought it to prevent it from being sold to a predatory vulture fund that would have liquidated Mr. Robinson's assets immediately. Camille looked at Grant. Ms. Robinson is not the villain here. She is the only creditor who has offered Mr. Robinson a forbearance agreement, an agreement he refused to sign. Judge Hallowell adjusted her glasses. She looked at Grant, then at me. Mr. Garrison, the judge said, the law does not care about family dynamics. It cares about contract rights. Ms. Robinson owns the notes. Unless you can prove the acquisition was fraudulent, she has the right to enforce them. We can prove it, Garrison insisted. She manipulated the market. She spread rumors to devalue the portfolio. That is a serious accusation, the judge said. Do you have evidence? We have testimony from associates, Garrison said vaguely. Camille cleared her throat. Your Honor, she said, speaking of evidence, we would like to submit an affidavit from Mr. Wade Ellison, the senior loan officer at the originating bank. The air left the room. Grant's head snapped up. He stared at Camille, his eyes wide with shock. He hadn't known. Camille walked to the bench and handed the file to the bailiff. Mr. Ellison's affidavit confirms 2 things. Camille said, first, that Mr. Robinson knowingly provided false information to secure the original loans, and second, that the signature on the guarantee for the $12 million credit facility, the signature purported to be that of Diane Robinson, was flagged by the bank's internal controls as a potential forgery, a flag that was manually overridden by Mr. Ellison at Mr. Robinson's request. The judge opened the file. She read it in silence. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed deafening. Grant turned to look at me. His face was pale. Stripped of all arrogance, he looked terrified. Judge Hallowell looked up. Her expression was severe. Mr. Garrison, she said, your client is asking for equity. Equity requires clean hands. If your client forged a guarantee to obtain this loan, he does not have clean hands. He has criminal liability. Garrison looked at Grant. Grant, is this true? He whispered. But the microphone caught it. Grant stammered. I had verbal permission, Mom said. Judge Hallowell leaned forward. Mr. Robinson, she said, did you sign your mother's name to that document? Grant looked at the judge. He looked at Garrison. Then he looked at me. I watched him. I did not feel triumph. I felt a profound, aching grief. This was my big brother, the one who had taught me to skip stones on the river, and I was watching him drown in a pool of his own making. Grant started. He stopped. He couldn't say it. If he admitted it, he went to jail. If he lied, and we proved it, he went to jail for longer. Before he could answer, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A man in a pinstriped suit walked in, carrying a briefcase. He walked with the confidence of someone who owned the building. "Objection, Your Honor," the man called out. Judge Hallowell banged her gavel. "Who are you?" "My name is Arthur Sterling," the man said. "I represent Vane Capital Management. We are filing an emergency motion to intervene. We hold a secondary lien on the Robinson assets, and we believe these proceedings are prejudicing our commercial interests." Camille leaned over to me. "That is Spencer Vane's lawyer. I knew it. Vane was here. He was trying to stop the implosion because he needed the chaos to continue. If Grant confessed and settled with me, the bond market would stabilize, and Vane's short position would fail." "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, "this is a closed hearing." "We have standing," Sterling argued, walking past the bar. "The debt acquisition by Ms. Robinson is suspect. We have reason to believe she is colluding with the debtor to defraud the secondary lien holders." I stood up. "I didn't mean to. It was instinct. That is a lie," I said. My voice rang clear in the courtroom. "Ms. Robinson, sit down," the judge warned. I remained standing. "Your Honor," I said, "Mr. Sterling represents the entity that engineered this entire collapse. They are not an interested party. They are the architects." Camille pulled at my sleeve. "But I didn't sit. We have emails," I said, pointing at Sterling, "between Wade Ellison and Spencer Vane, discussing the exact timing of the default, discussing how to pressure my brother into signing the forged documents. They are not here to protect their lien. They are here to stop the truth from coming out because it implicates them in a racketeering scheme." The judge looked at Sterling. "Is this true, Counselor?" Sterling scoffed. "This is absurd. We are a legitimate investment firm." Camille stood up, handing another file to the bailiff. "Here are the emails, Your Honor," she said, "including one where Mr. Vane refers to Mr. Robinson as the useful idiot and Miss Robinson as the collateral damage." The judge took the file. She read for a moment, her eyebrows climbing toward her hairline. She looked at Sterling. "Counselor," she said, her voice ice cold, "I am denying your motion to intervene, and I am forwarding these documents to the district attorney's office for review. I suggest you leave my courtroom before I find you in contempt." Sterling turned red. He glared at me, slammed his briefcase shut, and stormed out. The judge turned back to Grant. "Mr. Robinson," she said, "I am going to ask you one more time, and I suggest you think very carefully about your answer. Did you sign that document?" Grant looked at the door where Sterling had exited. His savior had abandoned him. He was alone. He looked at me. I nodded, just slightly. "A promise. Tell the truth, and I will catch you." "Yes," Grant whispered. I signed it. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Garrison put his head in his hands. Judge Hallowell banged the gavel. "Order!" she shouted. She looked at Grant with something like pity. "Mr. Robinson," she said, "in light of this admission, your motion for an injunction is denied. Ms. Robinson's ownership of the debt is affirmed." She turned to me. "Ms. Robinson, you have the right to enforce the notes. You may proceed with foreclosure or seizure of assets." I looked at Grant. He was staring at the table, a broken man. "Thank you, Your Honor," I said, "but I would request a brief recess. I believe the parties can reach a settlement." We met in the judge's chambers. It was a small room lined with law books. It was just me, Grant, Camille, and Garrison. Grant sat in a corner, refusing to look at anyone. "Here are the terms," I said. I placed the document on the table. It was the same forbearance agreement I had offered him in the shed. "I don't understand," Garrison said, reading it quickly. "You won. You can take everything. Why are you offering him a lifeline?" "Because I am not Spencer Vane." I said. I looked at Grant. Grant, look at me. He raised his eyes. They were hollow. You sign this. I said. You accept the independent auditor. You resign as CEO of Robinson Meridian, but you stay on as a consultant so you can draw a salary. We put the company into a structured workout plan. We pay off the small vendors first, the carpenters, the plumbers, the people you stiffed, and Mom's house? He asked. His voice was a rasp. Silverpine assumes the mortgage. I said, I will pay Vane. He gets his money, but he doesn't get the house. Mom stays. Grant looked at the paper. His hands were shaking so hard he couldn't hold a pen. Why? He asked again. Because you are my brother, I said, and because Dad was wrong. You are not a mistake. You just got lost. He broke then. He didn't sob loud, heaving sobs. He just put his head down on the table and wept quietly. It was the sound of 20 years of armor falling off. He signed the paper. As he handed it back to me, he leaned in close. Natalie, he whispered. Yes? You need to be careful, he said. I am always careful. No, he said. You don't understand. Spencer. He knew things. What kind of things? Private things. Grant said. Things Mom and I talked about in her kitchen. Things I only told her over the phone. He quoted them back to me. I frowned. What are you saying? I am saying he has ears. Grant said. He has recordings. Someone inside Mom's circle, someone close to her, is feeding him information. My blood ran cold. My mother's circle was tiny. Her bridge club, her housekeeper, her nurse. He has more than my debt. Natalie, Grant said. He has been watching us for a long time. I left the courthouse through the back exit, but the press was waiting. They swarmed the car, cameras flashing, microphones thrust against the glass. Ms. Robinson, did you bankrupt your brother? Is it true you are taking over the family estate? I rolled down the window an inch. I am here to protect my business and the people who depend on it. I said, the legal matters are resolved. My brother and I are working together to stabilize the situation. That's all. I rolled the window up. Your restraint makes it boring, Camille said, smiling tiredly. Boring is good, I said. Boring is safe. My phone rang. It was Detective Rayburn. Ms. Robinson, he said. I have an update on the fire. Go ahead. Detective, we analyzed the security footage from the service gate. We got a plate number on the van that dropped the suspect off. And? It is a rental, Rayburn said. Rented to a shell company. But here's the interesting part. The suspect used a cloned badge to enter. We found the original badge. It belonged to a vendor named Miller Linens. I know, I said. Jim Miller. But he still had his badge. Right, Rayburn said. But Jim Miller's badge was scanned 3 days ago at a coffee shop scanner. A portable skimmer. Someone bumped into him, scanned the RFID chip in his pocket, and cloned it. That is high tech. I said, it is spycraft. Rayburn said, whoever you are dealing with, they have resources. They have surveillance teams. This isn't just a business dispute. Ms. Robinson, this is an operation. I hung up. I looked out the window as the landscape changed from the gray concrete of the town to the white pines of the mountain. The stakes had shifted. They weren't just attacking my reputation. They were attacking my physical security. They were tracking my vendors. They were bugging my mother's house. But why? Why go to such lengths for a mid-sized resort in Colorado? We pulled up to the gate of Lake Glass Ridge at 2 o'clock. The parking lot was full. Luxury SUVs, sedans, shuttles. I saw guests walking the paths, pointing at the mountains. I saw bellmen loading luggage. I saw smoke rising from the outdoor fire pits. It was open. I got out of the car. The air hit me. Clean, cold, real. Tessa met me at the entrance. She was beaming. We are at 90% occupancy, she said. The kitchen is slammed. The spa is booked solid. And the guests? They love it. Natalie, they are raving about the view. I looked at the building. My building. It stood against the mountain like it belonged there. Strong and permanent. Did the news break? I asked. A few people are checking their phones. Tessa admitted. There is some chatter about the lawsuit, but mostly, they don't care. They are on vacation. They just want a hot drink and a soft bed. I nodded. That was the truth of hospitality. If you gave people safety and comfort, the rest of the world faded away. I walked through the lobby. I shook hands with guests. I adjusted a pillow on a sofa. I smiled until my face hurt. I was the hostess. I was the face of calm. But inside, my mind was racing. Grant's warning echoed in my head. Someone close to Mom. I went up to the terrace. The sun was beginning to set, turning the sky into a bruise of purple and orange. I stood there, looking out over the valley. I had won. I had the debt. I had saved Grant from prison. I had saved my mother's house. I had opened the resort, but I didn't feel safe. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated. The last time I answered an unknown number, it was a threat. I pressed answer. "This is Natalie Robinson." There was a pause, then a voice. Smooth, calm, male. It wasn't Spencer Vane. I knew Vane's voice. This voice was deeper, older, more cultured. "Ms. Robinson," the voice said. "Congratulations on acquiring the notes." That was a nimble maneuver. "Who is this?" I asked. "A friend," he said. "Or perhaps a competitor. That remains to be seen." "If this is about Spencer Vane," I said, "tell him I beat him. Tell him I know about the short position on the bonds." The man chuckled, a low, dry sound. "Mr. Vane is a blunt instrument. Ms. Robinson, he served his purpose. He flushed the weakness out of your family. He forced you to consolidate your power. In a way, you should thank him." I gripped the phone tight. "Who are you?" "The debt you purchased," the man said, ignoring my question. "The Class B tranche from the Alder Creek Trust. Did you ever wonder who owned the Class A tranche? The senior debt?" I froze. The Class A tranche was the controlling interest in the entire trust. Whoever owned that owned the trust itself. I checked the filings. I said, "It is held by a blind trust." "Exactly," the man said. "Blind to the public, but not to me." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "You think you ended the game today," the man said, "but you merely qualified for the main event. You proved you are not your brother. You proved you are worthy of attention. What do you want?" I whispered. "I want to see what you do next," he said. "Now that you have the leverage, let us see if you have the stomach to keep it. Because, Ms. Robinson, yes, the real debt is not measured in dollars. It is measured in favors. And sooner or later, I always collect." There was a click. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. I looked out at the darkening mountains. The lights of the resort were clicking on below me, warm and golden against the snow. I had thought I was fighting a battle against my brother. I had thought I was fighting a battle against a greedy financier. But as the wind picked up, swirling snow around my boots, I realized I had just walked onto a much larger chessboard, and the player across from me had been waiting for this move all along. The game hadn't ended. It had just begun. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We have walked a long road with Natalie Robinson, from the zoning hearing to the courtroom showdown, and while she has won the battle for her resort, the war seems far from over. I would love to hear your thoughts on this ending. Do you think Natalie made the right choice in sparing Grant? And who do you think is the mysterious caller at the end? Please leave a comment below letting me know where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this realistic drama, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, justice, and the high price of ambition. Until next time, keep your friends close and your leverage closer.